Hey y'all, it's your girl Sonja, and welcome back to She Say Sports. Today I have with me former NBA player and senior career counselor for the NBA, Dr. Lloyd Walton. Hello, Dr. Walton. How are you?
I'm great, Sonja. How are you?
I am doing well.
Good.
How's everything been going, since the COVID and everything? Your family's doing all right? Everybody's good?
My family's great. My wife is a doctor also. She's a doctor in nursing, and she's an executive at a hospital here in Chicago.
Okay.
So she's been on the front lines for over a year now, but she's well. She got her vaccines early. I followed that. It's been basically the same everywhere. People were backing off the vaccines. Well, let me say, first of all, people weren't even getting the vaccines. We didn't have anything initially. And then they got the vaccines, the Moderna and the Pfizer, and people started to take them. And a lot of people at that point were a little leery, particularly people of color. And I think we meaning people of color, I think we kind of weakened our stance a little bit and start accepting the fact that this may be something that will help us rather than hurt us.
Right.
So with that being said, my family's good. I'm really happy that nobody close to me. My mom is 86. She got both of her shots. So I'm extremely happy with. Yeah, it is. I'm extremely happy with the turnout with my family at this point.
Amen. I totally agree. Thankfully, my family is fine too. And I was in Chicago 3 weeks ago. I just needed to get away.
Right?
I didn't do too much. I visited some family, but I just needed to get a break. And so I found a cheap flight, and I got up there. So, yeah, that's
wow. I'm surprised city. I'm surprised you chose Chicago, though. Wow.
Oh, that's my favorite
not because
city.
I think we have a beautiful city.
Mm-hmm.
I love our city in the summertime.
Yes.
But it's still cold. In fact, we had snow yesterday. And with the other things that's happening in our city, with this rash of violence that's been taking place,
I know
it's a little scary, seriously, and that's so unfortunate because it's so random now. It usually was just in certain areas and things of that nature, but now it is all over our city, and there's really no safe place to actually go where you're going to be okay.
And I like I said, that's my favorite city. And a lot of people ask me why, and I'm like, well, first of all, I have a lot of family there. Been going there since I was 2, and I know, about what's been happening, especially, like earlier on this year. We're having the same situation here. We actually had a guy shot and killed somebody in the street yesterday at 11 o'clock in the morning during lunchtime.
Wow.
It was, and this is like the second killing on the street in the last month here. So it's a lot going on. 51 people have been killed by gun shooting, I believe, this year. So it's rough everywhere, and just like you say, it's like it doesn't matter what area anymore. It's everywhere now. So just praying for safety. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, around the country, and I would imagine around the world too. We're in a little bit of a turmoil right now, unfortunately. With the pandemic, with the violence, and things of that nature.
Right. Well, tell your wife, Dr. Walton, thank you for being on the front lines. It was much needed, and we're grateful for nurses and doctors all across the country and the world that has helped out so many people, to get their lives back. And hopefully this vaccine will do some things that we need to do so I can get out the country. So
we feel the same way. We didn't get out, usually we take a vacation, and go out of the country, and we weren't able to do it this year. So I agree with you. Hopefully this ends soon so we can go on our vacation this year.
Right, exactly. So Doc, you played in the NBA, and you were a point guard, which is a very important position in basketball. during that time, who did you look up to as far as point guards, and while you were playing? And do you have a favorite point guard today?
No, there's so many great players today, particularly because of my my position with the Players Association.
Yeah.
I've just enjoyed all of them. But when I was, in high school and college, I guess the person that I emulated, who I really admired, was Tiny Archibald. I would say, the thing about it, we always have these little debates or discussions with people, was that, young people don't necessarily see players that played years before them, so they only can really talk about the players that they see.
Right.
But you're talking about somebody who was only 6 feet tall, who led the league in scoring and assists 2 years in a row. Unheard of. And it was during a period where the game was very physical. And not to knock or throw shade on our young guys today, but the physicality has been taken out of the game, and so it's much easier to do the things that you want to do today than it was then. But Tiny Archibald was my guy. Yeah.
Wow, that's a great person to emulate. Yeah, of course I was a baby, but I know about him. I know,
right.
I know about him. He was something else. And when you were drafted in '76, and that was the year the ABA merged with the NBA. Could you please explain to the listeners what's the difference between the two, and was there a difference when the two associations merged?
Yeah, I think that the ABA players, they had two chips on their shoulders. One, I wasn't drafted to the NBA, which was the main league, right? But I was good enough to play in the NBA, so I got a chip on my shoulder. I'm going to prove that I was a good enough player that should have been drafted into the NBA. Then secondly, I think players, as a team, their organizations felt the same way, because only Indiana, Denver, and there might have been one other team that really came over, which is not a huge merger, but those were the only teams, and those players really felt like, their organizations really felt like they really fit. And Denver came in and had a really, really good team. San Antonio was another one. And you had George Gervin with San Antonio. You had great players with Denver. So, you had some really good teams, but that was the difference between the two. The other part of it was we began to have that three-point line. And that's when that kind of started, right? That was the big change. Now we didn't bring over the multicolored basketball that they were accustomed to play with. I don't know if that was good or bad, but so that was some of the changes that we had. But it was a new era that started when they came over.
And you guys, it was some tough players in the ABA. I mean, you named a couple of them, yourself and Dr. J. I mean,
oh, absolutely.
Yeah, it was some tough players. So I guess you said, the chip on the shoulder really showed them that they deserve to be in the NBA. And I was wondering, and it's a long shot, you may not have known him, but he was a former manager of mine and kind of like a father to me. He played in the ABA. David Walls. Does that name sound familiar?
David was white guy?
Black guy. He was a dark
black guy. Okay,
6'7",
no, I don't know
6'8". But
no,
I can't remember the team. He's passed away now. But
okay.
and I was like, I'm going to ask him. I was just curious. But yeah, so I was just curious about that. When it merged together at that time, and what was the main difference about it? So just interesting history, because a lot of people don't really know about the ABA. So
right, isn't that something? Yeah, it's so. I'm sorry, Sonja. I'm so sorry.
No, you're fine.
But it's just that I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday, in fact, and was trying to share with him some of the things that our young people today. Our young people never saw Michael Jordan play, for example.
That's
and
crazy.
It sounds crazy, right? Never saw Michael Jordan play. I just read a bit of an article earlier today where Michael was talking about the player that he emulated the most and who he never could really, who he felt he played better than when he played against him was Dr. J. So there's people who never saw either one of them play, only people that they saw play, and, the debate always goes up between, whether it's LeBron or was it Kobe or was it MJ, you know what I'm saying? So, it's really interesting when time passes by, you don't get a chance to have a reference point, to see them, to compare them, and so you only know what's in front of you. And today's kids, the last 10, 15 years, only knows about LeBron.
Their parents have failed them. That's what I'm saying. Because,
but I think, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Doc, this is, first of all, I taught in Dallas. This was like in 2006. And I mentioned Michael Jordan, and these were teenagers. This was middle school. They did not know who he was. And I almost passed out. First of all, he's my favorite player of all time. I've been a fan since Tar Heels. So I'm a huge Michael Jordan fan, for real. But I could not believe that, and it broke my heart. And so a lot of people, when the Last Dance documentary came out last year, thank goodness, because that, first of all, that saved us during COVID because it was so boring. So those 8 weeks of that documentary shed a lot of light on who he was and what he brought to the NBA. And that's when a lot of kids was like figuring out who he was. He was before Kobe and LeBron. It amazes me. I'm amazed at that.
Well, you sound like my wife, who is a huge Michael Jordan fan, and anytime somebody wants to make the comparison, just blasphemy to her. Like, you can't. There's no comparison. It's just Michael. Are you kidding me?
It's just Michael.
I understand. Yeah.
And I used to, when Kobe was in the league, I was not a fan of his because I hated when people said that he was better than Mike. And I'm like, he is doing everything that he does. But when he left the league, I started following him on Instagram, and I became a fan of who he was as a family man. I fell in love with that. And it broke my heart to pieces, like the world, when he passed away tragically last year. But I saw him in a whole different light. And that's when I started. I was like, you know what? I will put him in the GOAT conversation, even though I already know who it is. But, yeah, that amazes me. And even Dr. J, I'm like, it amazes, I'm like, I can't believe people don't know who he is. But it's the times, and basketball was much better back then. I know you can't say it, but I will.
No, I can. I mean, I feel basketball was better for a myriad of different reasons. I think we were much more fundamentally sound as individuals, as teams. We really had to learn the fundamentals of the game. We had to learn the game, and it wasn't so much flash and dash. When the rules began to change 10 to 12, 13 years ago, it was more about athleticism. But there was a reason for that. But the bottom line is that the game, in my opinion, was much better, in the 70s, in the 80s, in the 90s, right?
Yes.
You really had to be, in my opinion, a real player. I think players get away with being almost like specialists today. For example, you see guys who can only do maybe one thing, and they have a long career. And that means that there's some things that's missing out of your game that you don't necessarily have. Well, that wasn't the case in years before.
Right. I totally agree. Speaking of back then, Doc, was it someone you enjoyed playing against back then, like a tough competitor or a matchup? Kind of like an iron sharpens iron situation. Was there anybody?
No, when I was in the league, I was just basically a role player. So the only people I really enjoyed playing against, though, were people that I really knew, like maybe I went to college with. Then, it was special then to go against them and go all out because we were going to go hang out afterwards and talk crap to each other.
Right.
Yeah, we were friends. But, on the court, we were like, hey, man, I want to get the best of you. He wants to get the best of me.
Right.
And that's the way that was. But and the other people in the NBA, I didn't feel that way. I admired so many of them, as a college player. I can think about coming on the court, playing against the New Orleans Jazz back then. And back then, Pete Maravich was on their team. He was a star in the NBA. And I remember, there was back then they would have a jump ball at every quarter. And I remember walking out to start a quarter, and he says, Lloyd Walton from Marquette. Man, I was like, he know who I am. Like, wow. Oh, my God. He knows my name. This is someone who I had followed when he was in college at LSU. Walt Frazier, he knew who I was. And so you don't think people actually watch college basketball. Like today, we have sports on so many different channels and what have you. It would be easy to see why a player would know you. But we didn't have it like that back then. So, yeah, both of those guys, when they mentioned my name and said hello, I was, like, shocked. I think I was, like, I was out of it for about the first 3 or 4 minutes of the game because I couldn't even think, like, how does this guy know me, Yeah.
It's and college basketball was so amazing back then. Before the NBA, you played for Marquette under legendary coach Al McGuire. What was it like to learn from him, and what was something he taught you that's still a part of your life and you teach today?
Oh God, there's so many things, Sonja. Playing for Coach McGuire, because people often ask me. In fact, I'm going to consult him in a movie that they're getting ready to start shooting.
Really?
Yeah, hopefully soon. I've been hired as a consultant. But, he was so charismatic, and people ask me, from time to time, in today's coaching game, who does he remind you of? And I feel like he was a cross between Coach John Calipari at Kentucky and Coach Mike Krzyzewski at Duke.
Nice.
Disciplinarian, but had swag, had a presence. He was from New York City, so he had that New York voice, that East Coast voice, right? But he understood black players. He understood their plight. He understood what they really wanted to do. He understood what their parents wanted them to do, or in most cases, 2 different things. The players wanted to try to make it to the league. The parents wanted them to be educated. And he was like, you're going to do both. You come play for me, you're going to do both. You're going to get your education, and I'm going to do whatever I can to help you get to the league. And one of the things that he had instituted when he was at Marquette was that as long as you left school in good grace, even if after your 4 years of eligibility were up, and you want to come back and get your degree, they would still pay for it. Unbelievable at the time.
That is beautiful. Wow.
Yeah. And he actually, I think, I learned a lot, about the game and what have you, but he taught me so much just about life and humanity, and why people do things that they do, in most cases, was to always to better themselves. And the thing about it, he always told us to just think about our own lives. Why did we go to college? We wanted to better ourselves. Why do we want to go to the league? We want to better ourselves. All those kind of things that just made sense when you took a step back and thought about it. And then taught us, like I was explaining to Shaka Smart was just hired by Marquette about a week ago.
Okay.
Shaka Smart, you know who Shaka is?
Yes.
Okay, so Shaka just finished his tenure at Texas, was at Virginia Commonwealth, not Commonwealth several years ago, took them to the tournament. So I was just having a conversation with him the other day, and he was asking me to kind of explain how we had all of these great players. And when I say great players, we had All-Americans on our team. The 3 years that I was there, Maurice Lucas, Bo Ellis, who I just talked to this morning, Butch Lee, Earl Tatum. And how did you guys have all these All-Americans, and you guys, you really didn't have some outstanding one scorer or something like that? Because Al McGuire, that is, created a culture that when we win as a team, we all get a chance for the big league. And that just resonated with me during my recruiting, and I never stopped believing that or thinking that, because, most of us came from high schools where we averaged 20 points or better, and at Marquette, I think our leading score might have averaged 15 points. We never scored more than 59 points a game, but we were so good we always held teams to less than 50, 55, less than 55.
Right.
That's kind of unheard of. That doesn't really happen. But we bought in. We bought in that I'm going to help the other guy because I'm going to do well, and he's going to get a chance too.
Right.
So that was really, really important about helping your fellow man, in that case, your teammate.
That's I'm glad to hear that because it sounds like one of my favorite coaches of all time. I actually spoke with Terry Cummings on the show a few months ago. The Paul Blue Demon was my favorite team. Yeah.
PC?
PC. I talked to your homeboy. And
okay.
I know he was probably shocked, but we discussed him being in the NBA, but I wanted to talk about Ray Meyer. That's who I wanted to talk. I was a fan of his more than I was the team, I believe, as a little girl. And I love the Ray Meyer era. I did hang around watching and, supporting him when Joey came, but it was mainly after when Rod Strickland left, I kind of left because it just the same team, it was gone. That same magic that
it wasn't the same.
It wasn't the same. And he talked about Al McGuire, Terry did, but when he talked about Coach Meyer, it's like the same person almost. He bought, he took care of the kids, and he understood the black kids, and making sure that it was more than just. Terry said when he got ready to leave and go to the league, he told him he didn't want him to go, but he gave him advice, and he supported him. And so he was like, even though he had a father, he was like a father to him, and so a lot of the players. So that's really good to hear.
Well, let me tell you, I guess I've got to add this piece to it. I knew the Ray Meyer family very well.
Really?
Ray Meyer's son, his oldest son, Tom Meyer, was my coach for 2 years in high school.
Wow.
Mount Carmel High School. He was my coach. And I went to Ray Meyer's basketball camp for several years. And they recruited me heavy. A lot of people thought I might go to DePaul. I was just so in love with Coach McGuire and his swag. And I'm a kid, very impressionable. So Marquette had the coolest uniforms, period, during that period. Every year they had these cutting edge uniforms. Every year they would have 2 or 3 uniforms made to wear. And so I was sold by that, but I was sold mostly by Coach McGuire, so I wound up going to Marquette. I don't know if you know the story that our uniforms were outlawed after 3 years by the NCAA because they felt like it gave Marquette a recruiting advantage. So
right, I didn't know.
So we were the team that invented wearing the uniforms with wearing the jerseys outside your shorts. My roommate and beloved teammate who I alluded to earlier, I spoke to earlier today, Bo Ellis, was into fashion design in college. And, our jerseys were always out our pants, referee saying, put your jerseys in, coaches saying, put your jerseys in. And, one night we at the dorm room, and Bo's like, man, you think that Coach McGuire would let me design our uniforms? I was like, man, I'll ask him. So the next day at practice, I went to Coach McGuire and said, hey, Coach, can Bo design our uniforms? And, of course, he didn't think so. Well, give me a sketch or something like that, and I'll take it to Medalist Industry, where he was part owner. They made uniforms for a number of NCAA teams. So Bo designed it, took it to Coach McGuire. Next thing you know, we come out with the jerseys that were made to wear outside your trunks, and everybody was going crazy. Everybody started wearing them. Even DePaul wore them after us. But like I said, 3 years later, the NCAA outlawed them because they said it gave us a recruiting advantage. Now, that's crazy.
That's crazy. Wow.
Yeah.
I never knew that story. I never knew that.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
Doc, you could say that coaches like McGuire and Meyer are definitely 2 of the greatest collegiate men basketball coaches ever. And do you see any McGuires and Myers in today's college coaches? And you already mentioned two that you saw from McGuire. What about Myers?
Gosh, because he went to school at Notre Dame. Let me say this. One of the things about him, there's a few. When I think of Mark Few at Gonzaga, okay, and the reason why I think about Mark Few, he's been at Gonzaga for 20 years. You know, our coaches back then weren't going from school to school. And I'm not knocking this at all, but you think about Calipari, who was at UMass. He was at Memphis. You know, he tried his hand in the NBA, came back, you know, and now he's at Kentucky. So, you know, he's been around. You think about Coach Krzyzewski. He's been at Duke for 20 years. You know, you don't have those kind of guys like that. Guys are at a job 3, 4, 5 years, and they're gone. You know, and that's the reason why it doesn't make any sense for players, for the NCAA to punish kids when they wanted to transfer, where coach would leave and there's no punishment, no consequences, which makes no sense whatsoever. It's only this year, because of the pandemic, that they allow players to transfer without any consequences. But those two guys remind me of Coach McGuire and Coach Meyer.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, and even, you know, like, I forgot how long Coach McGuire was at Marquette, but Ray Meyer was at DePaul from 1940 something until the 80s. That's a long time. That's
right. Well, Coach McGuire coached at two places. He coached at Belmont Abbey for 2 years, and then he got a chance to coach Marquette. He was at Marquette for 11 years, and then he retired from basketball, period. So, you know, like I said, those kind of tenures are not really what you see today with our college coaches. I don't know if it's the money, you know, I don't know what it is, but coaches don't seem to want to drop an anchor and stay somewhere and build a program and go through the tough times, because just like good times, you're going to have some tough times. Guys have a tendency to run for more money or something else, which, you know, that's their choice, but that's the difference in it.
Yeah, it is a difference. And even you can even say that about some players too, not just in the NBA, but also at colleges. They switch schools or teams, you know, if they're not getting treatment like they want, or, you know, it amazes me. I miss old basketball. I miss a lot of, it's just not the same anymore. And, you know, I still love it. That is my favorite sport, but it's just different. And I know things have to change, but some things I wish can stay the same. I really, really do.
Well, you know, I agree with you. Sonja, you think about, well, I don't even really watch college basketball really until the NCAA tournament. One of the things that happened that took away my love for it was that, you know, back in the day, you had players who actually stayed in school to at least their junior year, right? So they created a fan base, right, that you knew you were going to be able to see them year in and year out. Where now your best players, they're done at 1 year, so then you go on to the next guy. And that's just the unfortunate part. I don't say the guy shouldn't go get paid at all, but I'm just saying you kind of knew from school to school. You think about Grant Hills was there 3 years. You think about this player, that player, at least 2 years. You think about Chris Webber, you know, Jawan Howard, you know, 3. You know, guys were out of school for a while. So you got a really chance to see them grow and develop. And now, you know, a guy is there really playing for that first 6 months. At least for the first semester, he's in class. Second semester, he doesn't go back to school because he's trying to get ready for the league.
Exactly. That's true. So, speaking of coaches, when you became assistant coach at Marquette under head coach Rick Majerus, how was it being on the other side of the game and at your alma mater?
Man, I remember getting that job. It was. I needed a job, first of all. Let me say that. And Rick felt like you know, I could fill a void on his staff. It was already different just because Rick was very different. Rick was a gym rat. He would go anywhere, watch basketball. I mean, that was his life. There's a story, and I don't know how true it is, but I think he told me, or maybe one of his close friends told me, that he got married. Once Rick got married, and he was only married for 6 months. And so people would ask him, like, what happened? Why'd you get divorced? And he said, well, she didn't love the game. So,
wow.
Yeah. He just loved the game inside and out. Coach McGuire kind of understood what his role was. He carved out his niche. After his first 4 or 5 years at Marquette, he didn't do a lot of the on the floor coaching. He left that to Coach Hank Raymond's, his second guy. So they were very, very different. So, but going back to Marquette as an assistant coach was great. I knew the fan base. I loved being on campus. But we weren't getting the players that we were getting when I was there. So it was very, very different. We were fighting for wins and stuff like that, as opposed to when I was there, when we basically felt and knew that we were better than most of the teams that we played against.
Okay. Gotcha. Did you get to speak with Coach McGuire when you decided to take the coaching position? And if so, what was his response?
I didn't. I spoke to him afterwards.
Okay.
And he really, he didn't think I really wanted to do it. Like, you sure this is what you want to do? This is a lot more demanding, than you might imagine. You have to really work at it. You got to support Rick and what he does. And I didn't know if I really wanted to do it. To be honest with you, it was my first coaching job. And it was demanding. And everybody's different, just like all of our bosses, right? All of our leaders at companies are very, very different. You find some leaders who want to be at the office at 4 a.m, and what happens sometimes is that they expect you to do that. And you don't want to be there at 4 a.m. You want to come in at 8 o'clock and do your job and leave, right?
Right.
You believe in work-life balance, Some coaches are like, well, no, I got to be here. I'm staying until 12 tonight. I got film to watch, all that kind of stuff. So, and that's kind of where Rick was, but Rick didn't demand that from his staff. But it was just different. And Coach McGuire was real serious about, you got to really decide if this is something that you want to do, because I know you can do it if you really want to do it, but it takes a lot of work, a lot of time away from your family. And I only did it for 1 year because of that.
Wow. That's interesting. So, well, I guess you kind of answered my next question. I was going to ask you, which did you enjoy being more, a player or a coach?
Player, by far. Player. It's not even close. It's not even close, man. It's not even close. Now, but I will tell you this, though, Sonja, probably 5 years after I left Marquette, I got into the real world, started working. I really wanted to go back and coach. I really, really wanted to coach then. I was like, I understand now, my family situation had been solidified, so I could really, really put the time in. And at that time, I just couldn't find a place that I felt, or even that coaching staff felt I was needed and I wanted to go to. Years later, I became assistant coach in the CBA back then, because I was going to go try to get back in the league as an assistant coach. But it's no easy task. As I said earlier, it's a lot of hours away from your family. It's a lot of work if you want to win.
Yeah.
And I know today that mainly it's a young man's game, and you have to get in it when you're young. You can't get in it when you get older. When you get in it young, it becomes part of your life. It's part of your routine. Your family understands it. It's part of their routine. They understand it. But yeah, I would love to have been able to stay at it. I wish I knew what I knew now. It's always retrospect. I probably could have stayed and, made a career out of that, because I love the game. I love the X's and O's.
Cool. So, Doc, your career has taken you many places, and you are currently a senior career counselor with the NBA, where you've logged over 2,000 counseling hours with the NBA players. So, are you considered a therapist for the players? Explain to me exactly what you do with the. That's interesting. I've never heard of that. You don't hear about a lot of those type of positions, in athletics. So, I think that's very interesting.
It is interesting. So, as you know, I don't care how much success you have on the court. At some point in time, the ball is going to stop bouncing. Another analogy we use is the air is going to be taken out the ball, and you're going to have to move on to the next phase of your life.
Mm-hmm.
So my number one charge is to help prepare players for when that time comes so that transition can be smooth. The challenge of it is for players to be able to look into their future and take advantage of the opportunities and resources that they have at their fingertips now. That's the biggest challenge, for them to be able to see that, understand that, and then take part of that. And I do that from the time they walk into the league until the time they leave, and even some I work with after they're out of the league. But I never envisioned that I would be doing this. This is my 22nd year. I never envisioned I'd be doing this long. I have enjoyed it. I've had some unbelievable stories of seeing kids coming to the league, grow up, get married, have a family, and become responsible members of society. That's unbelievable. It's just unbelievable seeing these guys. Yeah, it's like your own child. You see grow up and mature and start making good decisions as opposed to making immature decisions when they come in the league because they're 18, 19 years of age.
Right.
So yeah, that's something that just it fell in my lap, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I tell the players today I'm just as passionate about helping players go from where they are to where they want to be off the court in pursuit of success today as I was when I started 22 years ago.
That's awesome. Even though you said the position fell into your lap, did being a player, did it motivate you to do it because of when you were a player, and did you have a counselor like that, or what made you make that decision?
Well, first of all, let me just say this, we had no programs or services like we have today for our players.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I think that what happened with the NBA and the Players Association before it even got there, they found that too many players were struggling once they left the league. Now, we certainly weren't making the money that they make today, but players were struggling making that transition into the next phase of their life. And so they came up with the idea that their players needed to be provided with some guidance and some direction and some programs and resources so they could transition. The transition would be smooth, if you will, if at all possible, if they engaged. And so, as I alluded to, I started getting back into the game. I was asked to be assistant coach at the pre-draft camp for several years, and I got back around basketball people, right? And we're having these different conversations, and I was told about a position that the NBA and the NBA, it's a joint program that the NBA and the Players Association were creating. And actually, I interviewed for it, and I didn't get it. And I was like, you got to be kidding, man. I got a master's degree, and I've done this, I've done that. But anyway, I didn't get it. And a year or two later, they called me and said, man, we want to hire you. We want you to go through the interview, but we definitely want to hire you. And so I took the interview, and they did hire me, and I've been there ever since.
Wow.
Ever since, yeah.
22 years.
Yeah.
So, tell us about Lifelong Winners LLC Consulting.
That's my baby. That's the direction that I'm headed. When I leave the Players Association, it is my consulting company that we're going to go full bore within the next year or so. And when you think about it, I do motivational speaking. I'm also a certified life coach. Okay. We're going to do transition plans and things of that nature. When I think about my life coaching career, I like that more than anything else because, and I thought about this, if I had left already, I probably wouldn't have been busier than any point in time in my life during this pandemic period, this last year and a half. There were a lot of high school players, a lot of college players who couldn't play initially, and they were within because that's what they love to do. That was their routine to start playing in October and what have you. And a lot of parents didn't know what to do. Like, what are we going to do? And they needed somebody to talk to because I think about having a coach, whether it's football or basketball, having a coach in your sport. Well, who's your coach in life? Your life is going to last a lot longer than your basketball or football career. Who are you going to talk to? Who's been on that journey that can help you work through that, to get some awareness, get some clarity, be able to motivate you, to give you the kind of confidence to move forward off the court of the field. So that's what Lifelong Winners is about, that life coaching, preparing in those transitional plans together, and so you can move forward. Most players, and I give them the analogy that when they're in high school, they try to play for these different AAU teams, but they are very selective. They want to go play for this AAU team because they travel. This AAU team is sponsored by Nike. This AAU team is seen by all the major colleges. Well, that's a plan. You just haven't, formalized it and maybe written it down. The same thing is going to happen in life, right? You want to make the best decisions, right, so you can be at your optimum level to move forward in life. Well, you're probably going to need a coach to help you work through that, to navigate through that, to make better decisions so you can do just what you want to do. And that's what I want to do moving forward from the NBA Players Association.
I love it. And I love the name Lifelong Winners, because even after the game, you're still a winner. And this is only for athletes or just NBA players, or is it for anybody?
So all athletes. It's for all athletes. And let me say, I'm glad you said, you like the name. It is exactly what you just said. I believe that, say, for example, you're in high school. No matter what your dream is and what have you, your last official game could be in high school.
Right.
But that does not preclude you from being a lifelong winner.
That's
the same thing could be said for college players, right? Even though you want to get to NFL and the NBA, there's no guarantee you're going to do that. But you can be a lifelong winner outside of that sport when that sport is ended for you officially. And the same thing for professional athletes. So I came up with that, one night just thinking about, where's there a void? What void can I fill? And that's the void that I want to feel when I leave the Players Association.
I love it. That's good. I really, that is a great idea, Doc. And
Thank you.
And as a player, well, not me, because I never played. I'm tall enough, but I never played.
Okay.
Player, speaking of you as a player, I'm sure, especially, well, you know what, because you were in the league maybe, 4 or 5 years, but somebody who was in the league like 15, 17 years, they don't know what to do with themselves,
Well,
and
let me say this. That's the reason why they know now, if they take a little bit of their time during their career, in the summer, during the season, we figure out what it is that you want to do. That's what I'm here for.
I love it.
We'll figure it out, right? So for example, give you an example of how this kind of works. So you come in and you don't know what you do when you get in the league. Now, we start having these conversations if you want to engage. And you say, well, I don't really know, so we'll do some exploration kind of things, right? Where your skill set at. So most of them don't have a lot of skills. They went to college for 1 year, right? But you have some ideas like, I like real estate, or I like technology. Okay, so now what we're going to do, we're going to make sure that we introduce you to technology and real estate at the very entry level, which is basically just to educate you what it is and inform you about what the industry does and how it works. And we tell players, whatever it is that you want to do, we hope that you're passionate about it too. Whatever it is that you want to do, we're going to get you some experience on the entry level. And then we want you to decide if this is what you want to do or not. Either choice, it's a win. Let's say you say, no, this is not for me. Well, now we check that off the list. That's a win. We don't have to go back there. You don't want to do that. We move on to the next thing. And once you make a decision, this is the industry that you want to be in, then we're going to map out some things that you need to do in regards to networking, getting with people who've already gone through the journey like I have as a former basketball player. I can tell you all the things that's going on, how to do it. We're going to get you with someone like that in the industry that you want to get in. We're going to introduce you to a lot of those people who can share with you what the journey's like. So you won't make some of the mistakes that they made. Just like when you came into the league, you got with a vet. The vet kind of prevented you from making mistakes that he made when he came into the league. And if you're really interested, you're excited about it, you're passionate about it, you will take the bulls by the horn at some point and just be on your way because this is what you want to do. This is the career that you want to have once you're out of the league. So it kind of works like that.
That is awesome, and I'm glad to hear this because I've had conversations with former players and just friends and talk. Because if you don't already have a solid foundation, like saving your money and stuff, and I know the NBA and in the NFL, they do have sources, resources for all players to, teach them how to save or whatever, and so they can have money after the league. But just to end up having a career or doing something that you always was interested in, that's really, really cool. I love that. I'm glad to hear that you all are doing that. That's amazing.
And, Sonja, I'll just say this too, and then we have a financial arm as well because we know the horror stories, unfortunately, that's happened over the years. So we also have a financial arm so players can understand how much money they're really making. Just because they put it in the paper, you're making $5 million. Well, you're not going to get $5 million. You're going to get about 2.7. You know what I'm saying? Because Uncle Sam's going to get his. I always tell the story a little bit. Right? I always tell a story because we had players who come in and they look at their check stub and say, well, why do I got to pay FICA? Who is that? I never met FICA.
Wait a minute. Now, stop. Wait a minute. I've heard that on comedy shows or whatever. That's really real? They ask
oh, yeah, that's really real. Oh yeah, we've had players to do it. I mean, think about it. If you are 18 years old.
That's right. You're right. You're right.
Yeah. So, you want to know, you tell me I got to be careful who I pay. Well, who is this FICA guy? Well, I don't know him. So why am I paying him? Yeah, well, you got to pay your federal insurance contribution act. That's part of it. So,
wow.
Yeah. So that happens today. Now, the thing about it, though, to be really honest with it, that all of our programs and services and even the financial arm, you have to listen and you have to follow the advice and suggestions of whoever, whether it's financial or your career. You got to follow it. There are players who don't want to follow it. They want to do their own thing, and that's their choice. But,
and that's their choice, right.
Yeah, but the responsibility for the NBA and the Players Association is that we at least provide it for you. We can't make you engage and interact. They say that old adage, you can take a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. That's a fact.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's just like, on corporate jobs or, regular jobs, if you will, they suggest that you put money in your 401k. But
absolutely,
a lot of people don't. So
that's right.
It's a suggestion. They give you the resources, they give you the information, and like you say, it's up to you to make the decision. So I'm just glad that is out there. What you guys are doing, that's really great. It really is. But
and what?
I'm sorry.
Let me just say this last thing. Most people don't realize that we do this. They think that these players are just off on their own, and it's not. No, but they have all the support that you can imagine. If players came to us 7 years ago and they said we want a real estate program, we got the best and the best, and we created a real estate program. A year and a half later, they said we're interested in technology. We created a technology program. So it's a players' league. We want to do whatever we can to provide them with the resources and service and guidance so they can do what I said earlier, transition into the career that they want to be in the next phase of their life.
So let me ask you this, and I promise we're going to move on. What if a player that he's been out the league, been out the league for 10 years, and he hears this show Friday, or next week or whatever, and he I used to play in the NBA. Can he reach out to you all and get help in that way, or is it a time limit?
Well, first of all, I'm going to say, when I came around and spoke to your team, why in the hell didn't you take advantage of it? What was going on in your life that you didn't want to pay attention and you didn't want to take advantage of all these programs and services? So you just thought I was there wasting my time.
You're
right?
absolutely. I agree.
I'm going to give you the business. You ain't gonna get this free information without taking this verbal whooping. Now that's
I
not
love
gonna
it,
happen.
Doc. I love it.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. Where were you? What was you thinking? I totally agree. But I just had to ask the question.
Mm-hmm. Trust me, I get calls all the time from players who are not out the league, and they get that verbal whooping first. Like, because I'm not responsible to do players who are out of the league. I do it because I was a player and because I'm going to do it if I can so you still can be successful and have the kind of life you want to have. But I'm responsible for the ones who are actually playing now.
Right.
So they get all that information. They know that. And here's the other thing that people don't know. If they don't come to the meeting, I think it's up to $15,000 fine.
Really?
Yeah.
I would be
this is serious.
If I was them.
Yeah, but if you're making $30 million a year,
That's
you sure you're going to be at the meeting? I won't mention no name, but one guy after his second year, and he played 17 years, he said, just I'll take the fine money. I'm not going. I know what I'm doing. And he's an outlier because he had a great post-career. He had the plan. He followed the plan and was very, very successful.
Well, that's good.
But
that's good.
That's an outlier. That's not everybody by any stretch of the imagination.
Right. Wow. Well, that's good to know. I had to ask that question. But, Doc, before I let you go, earlier this week, former cop Derek Chauvin was on trial for the murder of George Floyd. He was found guilty on all 3 counts. What are your thoughts on everything from the murder, May 25th of last year, up until the verdict?
I just had this conversation last night with one of my NBA teams. We were on a Zoom call. I'll tell you something. Well, first of all, I saw it. I didn't want to believe it. Obviously, I didn't know that he was going to die. He was going to be killed. I didn't know that. But the behavior and the treatment that he got from the police, particularly Chauvin, was something that people my age have seen for years. And nobody ever did anything or said anything. So that hurt, but I'd seen it before.
Right.
And my young people, particularly, not just in sports, but my young people across the globe were able to see the video, and they began to see the lack of humanity for a human being. And they began to stand up across the world, march, hold hands, unite, and say, this is not how we want to be treated. In the conversation last night, there was one player who was sharing with me, because I started the conversation asking, like, how did you feel when you saw the verdict? So this one player says to me, Doc, I knew he was going to be found guilty. I knew that. That wasn't even a question in my mind. I said, well, let me just share this with you. Because of the disparity in our age, I'm much older than you are. Much older than you are. My stomach was in knots for 3 hours prior to this. Every minute, my stomach got tighter and tighter, and the fear that this guy was going to walk free. And I had this fear that this guy was going to walk free and be innocent because I have seen it so many times before.
Yeah. That's true.
And he's like, oh, wow. I said, yeah, ask your mother, ask your father. Ask older people in your family how they felt. I guarantee you most of them will say, I didn't know until they actually said guilty 3 times. Now, I also shared with them that I wasn't in a celebratory mood because he was found guilty. That's just one. That's just one, okay? One person that they found guilty. They didn't find the people that killed Emmett Till, right? They didn't find him guilty. Not Breonna Taylor, not Tamir Rice. You know, I could just go on and on and on about all of our young people, black people, unarmed black people who have been killed by the police, Jacob Blake. I could just go on and on. None of them have gone to jail. So now this is just one person, and I hope there's some closure and a better feeling for the George family. But we got to understand that there's a hell of a lot more for us to do as a people, right? A hell of a lot more. We got to get this George Floyd Policing Act passed. We got to do that.
Quickly.
And we just got to continue. Yeah, we got to move forward. We can't stop now because one cop, one rogue cop, and I think a racist cop, I'll say that too. You know, have your sunglasses on the top of your head and a knee on somebody's neck while he's handcuffed and laying on his stomach. And you act like, you know, it's a Sunday day that you're getting, you know, maybe some ice cream next. You just chilling, right? But let me go back, though. When Jacob Blake was shot shortly after George Floyd, my former team, the Milwaukee Bucks players, made a decision that there was something more important going on in the world than them playing basketball, and made a decision that they were not going to play. And every other team followed after that. I cannot tell you how proud I was to see them take a stance like that. I was moved to tears because I know what it was like when I played in the league. You didn't even have a thought like that. Your job would have been taken. The league was run by owners, and you would just been out of the league, period. Finally, players know they have a platform, and they know they have the power now, not the owners. And they made a decision across the board. We're not going to play basketball. We want to address some of these things that's happening in our community, just police brutality, et cetera. So I've just been so proud of them as young men, because some of them could be my sons. They're so young to understand and see something that's wrong and do something about it. You know, we were lynched. You know, we were ostracized from jobs if we did that. So I'm excited about where this is going to go. I was excited about everybody else that joined in, from the WNBA to soccer, you know, to baseball. You know, the only people, in my opinion, who didn't stand up was football.
Yep.
You know, they're not unified, and that's the reason why they can't get anything done, because they're not unified.
I agree.
So I think we're in a good place, but we're at the beginning. We're still at the beginning, but it's still a good place because we know what we can do as a people when we're united. And I'm talking black, white, you name it.
Yeah, that's what makes a difference. When, like you said, what you just said, not only black people, but I'll put it to you this way. When it first happened, and I'm looking at countries, China, all of these places protesting about his death, when I saw the witches and warlocks, they were like standing up for George Floyd. The Amish, I didn't even know they had TVs. They were standing up for George Floyd. And when you saw that his daughter said, "My daddy gonna change the world."
Change the world.
Spoke something prophetic. That came out of a baby's mouth, and he changed the world. I hate that he died, but his life is not in vain. Everything that is happening, and I was going to ask you this, because of so much racial unrest in the past year and the killing of George Floyd, do you think it plays into a lot of black student athletes returning to HBCUs? You see an exodus, if you will, with a lot of black student athletes coming back to HBCUs.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, we have just, you know, given these other schools and universities, we've given them a pass. Yeah. They haven't treated all of our kids the way they need to be treated. That's just the bottom line. And now, why not go where, you know, people can identify with you, your experience, who you are, where you came from. You're going to be treated better. I'm not saying you're going to be successful, but you're going to be treated better as a human being, as a person. And so I'm glad that they do. Everybody's not going to be able to do it, but for those who do, I commend them, and I support them 100%.
I'm so proud of them. I agree. Like you said, all of them are not going to be able to do it, and that's okay. But I'm thankful for the ones that are coming back and just giving HBCUs a chance, because a lot of them didn't even look at HBCUs However, I think with Deion Sanders at, my alma mater, Jackson State,
yeah.
Things are happening, and they're getting other looks now, and that's a good thing. So
one thing I agree with you 100%, but I just want us to be able to give Eddie Prime the kind of support, right, that they can be successful, because there have been many black men who coached in HBCUs, but the ones that they're going to look at and judge are the ones who have been stars and been successful. We got to help them do the things that they need to do, right, so they can make these boys into men. And I ain't talking about going to the next level, but I'm talking about make these boys understand that they have to be self-sufficient and responsible adults when they leave school. Just don't go there just to run up and down the court in the field, but you want to come out of there being somebody that your parents, your grandparents can be proud of. You want to be able to make your mark in life, and not just in sports. So that's what we need to be able to do. I don't want any kind of friction, because I know Deion and some other coach from another school, had some words, and I just keep it to a minimum. We want these guys to be successful. We don't want to give them anything, but we want them to be successful, and we want to tell kids the honest truth about it. A kid makes a decision between one or two schools, and one is an HBCU, and they offer the same thing, and hey, then let's give them a chance.
Let's
give them a chance to be able to do that. Yeah,
I totally agree. I absolutely agree. Dr. Walton, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been my pleasure, to speak with you today. And I got to bring you, as you call him, TC, I got to bring you, both of y'all, back on the show together.
Okay, Chicago boy, absolutely. Yeah.
I would love that. I would love that. I actually talked to him via DM the other day about something. His birthday was last month. He turned 60. So wish him a happy birthday. But he's doing really, really well. As you know, you still talk to him. So, yeah. But I definitely have to bring you guys back. Please tell the listeners how they can. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, man, let's make it happen. That's all I was going to say. Let's make it happen.
Definitely. Please tell the listeners how they can follow you on social media.
Oh, God. I don't even know. Everybody always tells me that, right? And so I always posting stuff, but okay, what is my handle for, what do you call it, Instagram, right? I don't even know my handle. Let me just say, it's Dr. Lloyd Walton, 1123. Dr. Lloyd Walton, 1123. And the other one that I'm on is Twitter, which I hardly go on, I hate to say. And I'm just serious. I'm old school, right? It's the Lloyd Walton. That's on Twitter.
Okay.
And then my old school is my favorite, and that's Facebook. So I'm just Dr. Lloyd Walton.
Okay. And guys, you can follow me on She Say Sports Facebook. She Say Sports 23 on Instagram. And that's my show for today. Until next time, this is Sonja with She Say Sports, and I'll see you on the radio.